Dr. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the cascading data streams flowing across her monitor. The Arecibo successor station hummed quietly around her, its massive arrays scanning the cosmos for signs of intelligent life. After 15 years of searching, most of her colleagues had grown cynical about finding anything meaningful in the endless static of space. But Sarah never stopped believing. The timestamp read 3:47 a.m. when the anomaly first appeared. A pattern buried deep within what should have been random background radiation from the Kepler 442 system, nearly 1,200 light-years away. Sarah's coffee grew cold as she isolated the signal, running it through every filter and algorithm the station possessed. What emerged made her heart race. It wasn't random, it wasn't natural. Someone, something, was broadcasting a repeating sequence of mathematical progressions, prime numbers, and what appeared to be stellar coordinates. The universal language of intelligence, exactly as Earth scientists had theorized for decades. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the emergency contact protocol. Within hours, the small observation room filled with the world's leading xenolinguists, mathematicians, and astrophysicists. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station director, paced behind the growing crowd of experts. "Are we absolutely certain this isn't some kind of pulsar anomaly or magnetic field interaction?" Webb asked for the 7th time. "The pattern is too complex," replied Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their lead mathematician. "Look at these sequences. They're not just broadcasting mathematics, they're teaching it. Starting with basic arithmetic and building toward complex calculations. This is clearly an attempt at communication." The breakthrough came when Dr. Elena Volkov, a linguistics professor from Moscow, recognized the underlying structure. "They're not just teaching math," she announced, her voice electric with excitement. "They're encoding information about their star system, their planet's orbital mechanics, and—" Her face went pale. "Their population numbers." The room fell silent as Elena continued her analysis. The numbers she extracted painted a grim picture. The alien civilization was broadcasting their coordinates, their basic scientific understanding, and what appeared to be population figures that were steadily decreasing. "It's a distress call," Sarah whispered. "They're dying." Over the next 72 hours, the world's greatest minds worked around the clock to decode the full message. What they discovered changed humanity's understanding of the universe forever. The broadcasters called themselves the Velathi, an aquatic species from a world orbiting a dying star. Their sun was expanding, slowly cooking their ocean world to death. The Velathi had been broadcasting their SOS for nearly 50 Earth years, hoping someone, anyone, would hear their plea. The message included detailed information about their biology, their culture, and their technology. They were peaceful, scientifically advanced, but lacked the capability for interstellar travel. Their world would be uninhabitable within 20 Earth years. Their population, once numbering in the billions, had already dropped to fewer than 10 million as rising temperatures and toxic atmospheric changes claimed more lives each day. The United Nations convened an emergency session. The revelation that intelligent alien life existed was monumental enough, but the knowledge that an entire civilization faced extinction created an unprecedented moral dilemma. "We're talking about a journey of 1,200 light-years," argued Secretary General Maria Santos. "Even with our most advanced theoretical propulsion systems, it would take centuries to reach them. By the time any help arrived, they would have been extinct for generations." But humanity had never been known for accepting impossible odds. Dr. Amanda Foster, director of the International Space Consortium, stood before the assembly with a determination that silenced the room. 3 months ago, our first successful tests of the Alcubierre drive prototype achieved faster-than-light travel on a microscopic scale. The theoretical framework exists. With global cooperation and unlimited resources, we could scale the technology. The debate raged for days. The cost would be astronomical, requiring the combined gross domestic product of every nation on Earth for the next decade. The risks were beyond calculation. Humanity had never attempted interstellar travel, and the Alcubierre drive remained largely theoretical. But something remarkable happened in those deliberations. Nation after nation pledged their support. Traditional enemies found common ground. Religious leaders called it humanity's divine test. Scientists spoke of the greatest rescue mission in the history of consciousness itself. The decision was unanimous. Within weeks, construction began on humanity's first interstellar vessel. The project, codenamed Phoenix Rising, would consume every resource humanity could spare. The greatest minds from every field abandoned their previous work to contribute to the mission. Factories retooled their production lines. Universities became research centers focused solely on the technologies needed for interstellar rescue. The Velothi continued broadcasting, unaware that their message had been received. Their population numbers continued to decline. Their star continued to swell. But for the first time since their distress calls began, their words were not falling on deaf cosmic ears. Humanity had heard their cry for help, and humanity was coming. The world watched as the Phoenix Rising took shape in Earth's orbital shipyards. A vessel unlike anything ever conceived, stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length and packed with technologies that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Fusion reactors powerful enough to energize small cities. Life support systems designed to function for decades without resupply. Medical bays equipped to treat alien physiology based on the biological data extracted from the Velothi transmissions. Most importantly, the ship carried something no human vessel had ever possessed, an Alcubierre drive capable of bending space-time itself, allowing faster-than-light travel across the impossible distances between stars. Captain James Rodriguez, a veteran of humanity's Mars colonies and asteroid mining operations, stood on the bridge of the nearly completed vessel. At 52, he was young for such a command, but his experience in deep space operations and crisis management made him the unanimous choice to lead humanity's greatest mission. "Status report," Rodriguez called to his crew. "Alcubierre drive integration at 97%, reported Chief Engineer Lisa Park. "We should be ready for final testing within the week." Navigator Tom Sullivan looked up from his calculations. "Course plotted for Kepler 442. Accounting for stellar drift and gravitational influences. Estimated flight time at 11 months, 4 days. 11 months. Rodriguez still couldn't believe it was possible. The same journey that would have taken conventional rockets tens of thousands of years could now be completed before his daughter's first birthday. If the drive worked, if they survived the journey, if they arrived in time. The Phoenix Rising carried a crew of 300 specialists, scientists, doctors, engineers, linguists, and yes, soldiers. Not because humanity expected conflict, but because the unknown demanded preparation for every possibility. The ship's cargo holds contained everything from atmospheric processors to prefabricated underwater habitation modules, all designed based on the environmental data extracted from Velothi transmissions. But most precious of all was the cargo hold designated Hope, containing the genetic material and embryonic samples of Earth's entire biosphere. If the Velothi world could be saved, humanity would share their own evolutionary heritage, ensuring that life would continue even if one world died. Rodriguez walked to the observation deck and stared out at Earth, blue and beautiful, teeming with life that had never known the fear of a dying sun. In a few days, he would leave all of this behind, leading humanity into the vast unknown to save strangers they had never met, whose faces they had never seen. It was, he reflected, exactly the kind of impossible mission that humanity specialized in. The Velothi broadcasts continued, weaker now, their population dropping below 8 million. Their messages spoke of preparation for the end, of final cultural preservation efforts, of acceptance of their fate. They had no way of knowing that across 1,200 light-years of space, an entire planet had mobilized to save them. They could not imagine that a species they had never encountered was sacrificing everything for the chance to pull them back from the brink of extinction. The Phoenix Rising's Alcubierre drive activated with a sound that physics textbooks insisted should not exist in the vacuum of space, a deep, harmonic resonance that seemed to come from the very fabric of reality itself. Captain Rodriguez felt it in his bones as space-time bent around their vessel, creating a bubble of normal physics while the universe outside compressed and expanded according to humanity's desperate mathematics. "Drive stable," announced Engineer Park, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "We are officially traveling faster than light." Rodriguez stared at the main screen where stars streaked past like cosmic rainfall. In the span of heartbeats, they had left Earth's solar system behind, hurtling toward a distant world where 8 million Velathi souls clung to life aboard floating cities as their ocean world slowly boiled around them. The journey that followed became legend among humanity. 11 months in the void between stars, with only the Velathi's weakening transmissions to guide them and remind them why they had left everything they knew behind. Dr. Sarah Chen, the woman who had first discovered the signal, worked tirelessly in the ship's linguistics laboratory, refining humanity's understanding of Velathi language and culture. The aliens' latest transmissions painted an increasingly desperate picture. Their floating cities were failing as the rising temperatures made metal expansion impossible to manage. Atmospheric pressure changes were making breathing difficult even with their technological adaptations. "We're receiving something new," Chen announced during the 4th month of their journey. "It's not the usual mathematical sequence." The bridge crew gathered around her station as Chen played the decoded transmission. Through the cosmic static came something unprecedented, actual Velathi voices, hauntingly beautiful sounds that resembled whale songs mixed with melodic harmonics. "They're singing," whispered Communications Officer Janet Walsh. Chen's translation software worked frantically to parse the meaning. It's a death song, a final cultural preservation. They're recording their history, their poetry, their scientific achievements, everything they've ever been, compressed into a final transmission. The weight of that revelation settled over the crew like a shroud. Somewhere ahead of them, an entire civilization was preparing to die with dignity, preserving their legacy in the hope that someone, someday, might remember they had existed. "How long before we arrive?" Rodriguez asked quietly. Navigator Sullivan checked his calculations. 7 months, 12 days at current speed. 7 months. Rodriguez hoped it would be enough. The Phoenix Rising had been designed for this mission, but space had ways of testing even the most careful preparations. In the 6th month, they encountered a debris field from an ancient stellar explosion that their sensors hadn't detected from Earth. The ship's hull groaned under the stress as microparticles traveling at relativistic speeds peppered their shields. "Hull breach on Deck 7!" Park shouted over the alarm klaxons. "We're venting atmosphere!" The crew's response was swift and coordinated. Emergency bulkheads sealed the damaged sections while repair teams suited up for dangerous external work. For 12 hours, humanity's best engineers worked in the void between stars, patching their ship with determination that bordered on madness. Rodriguez floated outside the ship in his EVA suit, personally welding hull plates while the cosmic wind of their faster-than-light passage created aurora-like patterns across his faceplate. Around him, his crew worked with a dedication that made him proud to be human. "This is insane," muttered Engineer Park over the comm system as she guided a replacement hull section into position. "Insanity is humanity's specialty," Rodriguez replied, his arc welder sparking against the darkness. "Besides, 8 million Velathi are counting on us to be just this crazy." The repairs took 3 days. 3 days during which the Velothi population dropped by another 50,000. But the Phoenix Rising continued its impossible journey. As they approached the halfway point, the ship's xenobiology team made a disturbing discovery. Dr. Michael Barnes, their lead biologist, called Rodriguez to the medical bay with urgency in his voice. "Captain, we need to talk about the atmospheric composition of Kepler 442b, Barnes said, gesturing to his analysis screens. Based on the latest Velothi transmissions, their world's atmosphere has changed more than we anticipated." The readings were sobering. The Velothi's dying star was not just heating their world, it was fundamentally altering the chemical composition of their atmosphere. Oxygen levels were dropping while toxic compounds increased daily. "How long do they have?" Rodriguez asked. Barnes ran the calculations on his tablet. "Based on their current atmospheric degradation rate, even the hardiest Velothi will be unable to survive more than 6 months, maybe less." 6 months. They would arrive just in time to witness the extinction they had traveled across the galaxy to prevent. "Then we work faster," Rodriguez declared. The ship's engineering team, led by Park, began implementing modifications that pushed every system beyond its design specifications. The Alcubierre drive, already running at maximum efficiency, was overcharged using power diverted from life support and non-essential systems. The crew accepted reduced rations and colder living spaces without complaint. "We're gaining 2 weeks," Park announced after 72 hours of non-stop modifications. "Maybe 3 if we're willing to risk complete drive failure." "Risk it," Rodriguez ordered without hesitation. Word of their progress somehow leaked back to Earth, where humanity watched their progress with breathless attention. Vigils were held on every continent. Children drew pictures of the Velothi based on the biological data transmitted from the Phoenix Rising. The entire human race had invested emotionally in the success of this impossible mission. In the 9th month, they received the transmission that changed everything. Dr. Chen burst onto the bridge with tears streaming down her face. "Captain, you need to hear this." The message was unlike anything the Velothi had sent before. Instead of their usual mathematical sequences or cultural preservation efforts, this transmission contained something extraordinary. Hope. "They know," Chen whispered. "Somehow they figured out that their messages were received. They don't know who's coming or when, but they know someone is coming." The transmission included detailed coordinates for their remaining population centers and technical specifications for their life support systems. More importantly, it contained a message that needed no translation, a mathematical representation of gratitude that resonated across species barriers. "How could they possibly know?" Rodriguez asked. Chen displayed the analysis on the main screen. "They're monitoring changes in the cosmic microwave background radiation. Our Alcubierre drive is creating detectable space-time distortions. They've calculated that something large is traveling toward their system at faster than light speeds." The implications were staggering. The Velothi were not just waiting to die, they were preparing for rescue. Their transmissions now included technical data about their physiology, their atmospheric requirements, and their cultural needs for any potential evacuation. "They're trusting us completely," observed Science Officer Dr. Amanda Foster. "They don't know who we are or what we're capable of, but they're giving us everything we need to save them." The 10th month brought new challenges as they entered the outer regions of the Kepler 442 system. The dying star's radiation played havoc with their sensors, and gravitational anomalies from the expanding stellar mass forced constant course corrections. But it also brought their first visual confirmation of the Velothi world. Through the telescope array, they could see Kepler 442b, a blue-green world wrapped in swirling storm systems, its surface dotted with what appeared to be massive floating structures, the Velothi cities. "My God," whispered Navigator Sullivan. "They're beautiful." The cities were unlike anything human engineers had ever conceived. Organic in appearance but clearly technological, they floated on the increasingly violent oceans like living islands, their structures seeming to breathe and adapt to the changing environment around them. As they drew closer, they could see the devastation. Several cities were dark, their populations evacuated to the remaining settlements. The ocean itself glowed with bioluminescence, a sign that the ecosystem was failing as temperatures rose beyond sustainable levels. Population count? Rodriguez asked. Chen checked the latest transmissions. 6,200,000. They're dying faster now. The final transmission they received before entering orbit broke the hearts of the entire crew. It was another song, but this one was different. Dr. Chen's translation software struggled with the complexity of the harmonics before finally displaying the meaning on screen. It was a welcome song, a song of greeting for the strangers who had crossed the impossible distance to reach them. The Velati were singing to humanity, welcoming them to their dying world with joy rather than desperation. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Phoenix Rising as it achieved orbit around Kepler 442b. Below them, 6 million Velati souls waited in their floating cities, trusting that these unknown aliens who had traveled from unimaginable distances possessed the ability and the will to save them. "All stations, this is Captain Rodriguez," he announced ship-wide. "We have arrived at Kepler 442b. The Velati are waiting. Begin rescue operations immediately." The crew moved with practiced efficiency born from months of preparation. The medical teams prepared quarantine and treatment facilities. The engineers activated the atmospheric processors. The xenobiology specialists prepared to make first contact with an alien species, but most importantly, the loading bay teams prepared the evacuation shuttles. Humanity had traveled 1,200 light years and 11 months to reach this moment. The greatest rescue mission in the history of consciousness was about to begin. The Phoenix Rising settled into a stable orbit as Kepler 442, the dying star that had doomed an entire world, swelled ominously in the distance. On the planet below, the last cities of the Velati civilization waited in the rising heat, their inhabitants singing songs of welcome to the strangers who had answered their impossible call for help. The real test of humanity's resolve was about to begin. The first shuttle launch from the Phoenix Rising carried a team that would make history. The first humans to set foot on an alien world inhabited by intelligent life. Dr. Sarah Chen sat strapped into the pilot's seat, her hands steady on controls that would guide them toward a floating city designated Velati Prime, home to nearly 500,000 souls. Beside her sat Commander Maria Santos, a marine biologist turned space explorer, and Dr. Elena Volkov, whose linguistic expertise would facilitate humanity's first conversation with another sentient species. The shuttle's hold contained atmospheric analysis equipment, universal translation devices, and most importantly, a message of hope recorded by the combined voices of Earth's children. "Approaching Velati Prime," Chen announced as their shuttle descended through the planet's increasingly toxic atmosphere. "My God, look at the size of this thing!" The Velati city stretched across the ocean like a living organism, its biotechnological structures rising from the water in graceful spirals and organic curves. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed across its surface in what appeared to be both functional lighting and artistic expression. Despite the crisis facing their world, the Velati had created something beautiful. "Atmospheric readings are worse than we calculated," reported Santos. "Oxygen levels are at 14% and dropping. Temperature is 47 degrees Celsius. How are they surviving?" Chen checked her instruments. "Their biotechnology is adapting faster than we thought possible. Look at those membrane structures. They're creating localized atmospheric pockets." As they approached the city's landing platform, creatures began to emerge from the biomechanical structures. The first sight of living Velati took Chen's breath away. They were elegant beyond description, with elongated bodies that moved with fluid grace both in and out of water. Their skin possessed a translucent quality that revealed bioluminescent patterns beneath, creating internal light shows that seemed to reflect their emotions. Most remarkably, they moved in coordinated groups, their bioluminescence synchronizing in patterns that suggested complex communication. "They're beautiful," whispered Volkov. The shuttle touched down on a platform that seemed to grow around their landing craft, biotechnological tendrils extending to provide a seal against the toxic atmosphere. Through the transparent walls of the extending corridor, hundreds of Velothi gathered, their internal lights pulsing in what could only be described as excitement. The first Velothi to greet them was clearly an elder, its bioluminescent patterns more complex and varied than the others. When it spoke, the sound was hauntingly melodic, like whale song mixed with musical instruments humanity had never imagined. Volkov activated her translation device, and after several minutes of linguistic processing, words appeared on her screen. "Welcome, star swimmers. We have sung to the void for so long, we had forgotten that someone might sing back." Chen felt tears streaming down her face as she activated her own device. "We heard your songs across the darkness. We came as fast as we could." What followed was the most important conversation in human history. The Velothi elder, who introduced itself as Harmony of Deep Currents, explained their situation with a dignity that broke the humans' hearts. "Our world song grows quiet," Harmony explained. "The Firestar swells, and our ocean cities cannot adapt quickly enough. We have perhaps 60 of your day cycles before even our strongest bioforms fail." 60 days. Chen's mind raced with the logistics. 6 million Velothi, scattered across 17 floating cities, all needing evacuation to a ship designed for long-term habitation by 300 humans. "Can your people survive in our artificial environment?" Chen asked. "Show us your vessel's song," Harmony replied. "Our bioshapers will learn its harmony." What happened next amazed even humanity's xenobiologists. When the Velothi reviewed the Phoenix Rising's technical specifications, their response was not despair at the differences between their biology and human technology. Instead, they began to sing. The song was unlike their previous transmissions. This was working music, construction harmonics that somehow guided their biotechnology to begin adapting to human standard atmosphere and pressure. Within hours, the Velothi were producing organic modules that could interface with human systems. "They're not just adapting to our ship," reported Dr. Barnes from the Phoenix Rising. "They're showing us how to improve it. Their biotechnology could increase our life support efficiency by 300%. Captain Rodriguez watched from orbit as the impossible became routine. His crew worked alongside Velothi bioshapers to modify the Phoenix Rising's cargo holds, creating hybrid living spaces that combined human engineering with alien biological mastery. The ship that had traveled across the galaxy to mount a rescue was being transformed into something beyond either species' original imagination. The evacuation began with the most vulnerable populations, the young and the elderly Velothi, whose bioforms were least capable of adapting to the changing environment. The shuttles ran continuous cycles between the floating cities and the Phoenix Rising, each trip carrying precious cargo in the form of living, breathing individuals with their own hopes and dreams. Commander Santos led the evacuation of Velothi 7, a smaller city housing the species' cultural archivists and artists. As she guided a group of young Velothi into the shuttle, one of them created a light pattern that needed no translation, a representation of a star with small symbols traveling away from it toward another star. "They understand what we're doing," Santos reported to Rodriguez. "This youngster just drew a picture of their journey to Earth." But the evacuation was not without its challenges. As Kepler 442 continued to expand, solar radiation began affecting both human technology and Velothi bioforms. Several shuttles suffered system failures that required emergency repairs using hybrid human Velothi solutions. During one crisis, Engineer Park found herself working alongside a Velothi bioshaper named Current Through Crystal Caves to repair a failing atmospheric recycler. Neither spoke the other's language, but they communicated through shared understanding of engineering principles and the universal language of problem-solving. Their biotechnology doesn't just grow, Park explained to Rodriguez after the successful repair. It thinks. It learns. It's like working with living computers that can redesign themselves in real time. By the fourth week of evacuation operations, 4 million Velothi had been successfully transferred to the Phoenix Rising. The ship had been transformed beyond recognition, its cargo holds now featuring flowing bio-architectural spaces where Velothi communities maintained their cultural practices while adapting to their new environment. The crisis came during the evacuation of Velothi Prime, the largest remaining city. A massive solar flare from the dying star struck the planet's atmosphere, creating electromagnetic storms that grounded all shuttles and threatened to destroy the remaining biocities. "We're losing structural integrity across all remaining settlements," reported Santos from the surface. The bioforms can't adapt fast enough to this level of radiation. 2 million Velothi remained on the surface, and the Phoenix Rising's shuttles couldn't launch until the radiation levels decreased, which wouldn't happen for at least 48 hours. That was when humanity revealed why they were called Deathworlders. "I'm taking the Phoenix Rising into the atmosphere," Rodriguez announced. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. "Captain, the ship wasn't designed for atmospheric entry," Park protested, "especially not in these radiation levels." "The Velothi bioshapers have been modifying our hull," Rodriguez replied, "and humanity has a long history of making impossible plans work through sheer stubborn refusal to accept failure. What followed became known as the Kepler 442 atmospheric descent, a maneuver that defied every principle of safe spaceflight. Rodriguez piloted a 2-kilometer interstellar vessel directly into a planet's atmosphere during a radiation storm, using modified biotechnological enhancements that had been grown rather than built. The Phoenix Rising descended through the toxic clouds like a controlled meteor, its hybrid human Velothi systems adapting in real time to conditions no engineer had ever planned for. On the surface, the remaining Velothi cities prepared for direct loading as humanity's impossible ship became a massive rescue vessel. "Hull temperature approaching critical," Park announced as they descended through the storm. "Velothi bioforms are compensating," replied Dr. Barnes from the biology lab. "They're actually cooling our hull by redirecting thermal energy into biological processes." The loading process took 18 hours. 18 hours during which the Phoenix Rising sat partially submerged in the alien ocean, while 2 million Velothi evacuated their dying cities and entered humanity's ship. The biotechnological integration was so complete that many Velothi cities simply merged with the Phoenix Rising, becoming part of its structure rather than being abandoned. When they finally lifted off, the Phoenix Rising carried more than passengers. It carried the living essence of Velothi civilization itself. The journey home took 14 months due to the additional mass and the need to maintain Velothi biosystems. But those 14 months transformed both species in ways neither had anticipated. Human children learned to communicate with Velothi youngsters through bioluminescent patterns. Velothi artists created hybrid art forms that combined their natural light sculpting with human concepts of visual representation. Engineers from both species collaborated on technologies that seemed impossible to either culture alone. Most importantly, the Velothi began to sing new songs, songs of gratitude, of friendship, and of hope for the future. When the Phoenix Rising finally entered Earth's solar system, it was no longer a human vessel. It had become something unprecedented, the first truly interspecies community, carrying 6 million grateful aliens and 300 humans who had discovered that the universe was far less lonely than they had ever dared to hope. The message that preceded their arrival was broadcast to Earth in both human languages and Velothi harmonics. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Phoenix Rising, returning home with 6 million new citizens of the galaxy. We left Earth as a rescue mission. We return as the beginning of something unprecedented. Proof that intelligent species will cross impossible distances to help one another survive. The Velothi established their new cities in Earth's oceans, their biotechnology adapting to their new world with the same grace they had shown throughout their ordeal. But more importantly, they shared their knowledge, their culture, and their profound wisdom about biological harmony with their human rescuers. The galaxy, they learned, was full of intelligence. But it had taken humanity's particular brand of determined insanity to prove that when civilizations call out for help across the vast darkness, someone will always answer. The lost SOS had been heard, and the Deathworlders who answered had changed the course of galactic history forever. Years later, when other species detected the first transmissions from Earth Velothi collaborative science stations, they would wonder what kind of civilization could achieve such impossible cooperation between species so different in biology and culture. The answer, transmitted in both human language and Velothi harmonics, was simple. We are the ones who answer distress calls. All of them. No matter how far, no matter how impossible. That is who we choose to be. And across the galaxy, other civilizations began to sing new songs of their own, songs of hope, knowing that in the vast darkness between stars, someone was always listening. The countdown to humanity's first interstellar rescue mission had begun.